if you're eager to have some of your knowledge satisfied, but we got a few more housekeeping things we have to do. And in that vein, there have been so many people who participated to make this event possible. So we have to say thanks to them. And in that vein, I have someone who's one of our co-organizers and helped every asset of the way, who's going to give a proclamation from the city. And that comes from my friend, Yvette Williams.
Good evening. I'm carrying a proclamation from our county commissioners. Whereas it is the policy and pleasure of the Board of County Commissioners to honor and recognize those extraordinary individuals, groups, or programs which enrich the lives of many in their community. And whereas Runoko Rashidi is a historian, anthropologist, research specialist, writer, world traveler, and public lecturer, focusing on the African foundations of humanity and classical civilizations. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's quite lengthy. But then we'll go down to whereas a lecturer in the United States, Europe, and Canada, Mr. Rashidi has made hundreds of presentations at colleges, universities, secondary schools, libraries, bookstores, churches, community centers, and even prisons. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Commissioners of Clark County, Nevada, do hereby join in proclaiming April 19, 2013 as Runoko Rashidi Day. In honor of his tireless efforts to enrich the lives of others and extend our best wishes for happiness, good health, and continued success and personal fulfillment in future endeavors. And this is signed by our Vice Chair Lawrence Brown, Tom Collins, Chris G., Susan Brager, our own Commissioner Lawrence Weekly, Mary Beth Scow, and our Chair Steve Sisolak. So we'd like to present this to you.
And you know we get a lot of support from our elected officials. They may not be present, but you know who supports us in this district. So thanks special to that council person and that commissioner. And in the next vein, we have something again from the city of Las Vegas. That was the county. Now we have something from the city, and we'll get Brother Keith Brantley to come back out and present this to him.
At the risk of redundancy, the city of Las Vegas has also issued a proclamation in honor of Dr. Rashidi. And I myself have had the honor of meeting this brother a couple of times. And I can bear witness to the works that he's done and the amount of knowledge that he gives out. And if any of you follow him on Facebook or any of the other things, you'll know that this brother gives away knowledge for free. Things that you may not know, things that you may have only heard about. But I digress. We go on. The City of Las Vegas, City Council, Her Honor the Mayor, and our own Ward 5 City Councilman Ricky Barlow declare this day, April 19th, 2013, also Runoko Rashidi Day, and we'd like to honor that brother with this.
2 days. All right. You see, you come to Las Vegas, not only can you win some money, you can get a day if you do the right thing and bring it right. In any event, how you doing? I'm Franklin G. from Power 88 Radio, and I'm going to be doing the welcome. I don't need glasses, I can't see y'all anyway. Well, let's get this correct. I guess to my Islamic brothers, I say Salam Alaikum. To my Christian brothers, I say, keep the faith, he is risen. To my Jewish brothers, I say, Shalom. To my nationalist brothers and sisters, I say, free the land. To my extraterrestrial Negroes, I say, the force is with you. And for your everyday Negroes, what's up? If I missed you, I apologize, but I think I covered the group. That's here in front of me. Part of this welcome is to let you know that these kind of things, they happen not so much in a vacuum, but because people got together. So I'd like to let you know that this happened with the cooperations of several media outlets, that being the Sentinel Voice, that being our own, yeah, let's hear it, it's the only publication. Mr. Savoy is floating around here assisting and providing tutelage to myself, because this is our first event, we hope to do more. Mr. Rodney Smith, with our own voices, our own voices, publication, and he's also, you know, on the internet Saturday mornings, so he's also providing part of the drum that we need to get information out. And the Democratic Black Caucus, yeah, we got some elected folks. And as I said, Power 88, under the auspices of the general manager, allows us to have the show that Ramon and I, well, mainly my show, it's a community show that's done by Power 88. You know, Commissioner Weekly has his, and you know, Pat Cunningham has hers. We all serve different avenues of approach towards the same political, social interest, which is enlightenment and hoping that the black diaspora will one day, you know, will reach up to that, grab that mantle we all look at. And back to the project that we have here, when I heard Dr. Rashidi for the first time, I was, okay, you know, okay, I won't bring him, but I brought him on the air. And then when I brought him on the air, I'm telling you, the response, usually I get 5 or 6 emails. 2 or 3 are negative all the time, and then you know the brother that always calls in about the Moulin Rouge. So, you know, when I get 12 or 18 emails about an individual, I recognize that something's different. Even with the negativity, or even the positivity, people just had inquiring minds. So that's what I can do through that radio station of Power 88. That is our drum. It is what connected us. And if you look at a lot of places, you may think certain things happen on their own. They don't. People have to get together to struggle to endeavor to make it better. And also in that aspect, I'd like to thank the ladies at the West Las Vegas Arts Center, who when I came had open arms, had information, had positivity, creativity. Here for them. The Doc and the ladies over there, this place is a jewel. This place is a jewel. And I tell you that, I'm coming from Harlem, and I remember how I used to hang out in the library, but we didn't have a theater. We just had the steps in the hallway, you know, we sang there. But in any event, this place, and when the African people got together to make this event happen, everybody I just mentioned came and stepped up to the plate tremendously. As you did, you heard something that made you want to come out. Regardless of whatever else you had to do, some folks wanted to come, they were on their way, we're hoping and this and that. You guys made it here. Part of the struggle is making it. Part of the struggle is when groups can get together, as you see here, witness to your testimony by coming. The people who put this together, as I said, Rodney Smith, Mr. Ramon Savoy, Lisa Moses, excuse me, I'll talk about Lisa in a minute, but the ladies over at the West Las Vegas Arts Center, the theater here, and Yvette Williams, when we all got together and figured out this was going to be something that we could do, we did it. And we hope this is the first. So somewhere during the course of the evening, you may see some folks walking around and we just want to get your name, your information. If you want to make a donation, we're willing to take it because we ain't driving Porsches, and you know, there's no money in the revolution. As Marcus Garvey said, if the leader of your revolution is driving a Cadillac, something wrong. Alright, so the only reason this happens is because folks got together, put their time, energy, and money to bring this gentleman here. And Power 88, I kid you not, I know the pledge drive just went over, but I'm going to tell you, write a letter. It makes a difference. Make a phone call. It makes a difference. If we didn't have it, we wouldn't have events like this. We wouldn't have the opportunity, as I said, to touch or hear that drum. In our formal lives in Africa, in the original format of man, we sat around the fire. We told stories. We exchanged information, if it was just seasonal growing information, or which was the best route to get to another place. These things don't happen in modern society with all the technology that we have. But Power 88 allows that. So I'm going to get off my Power 88 box and say, welcome, thank you for coming out, and I'm going to introduce Miss Lisa Mosley, who, I want to tell you, I only known her a few months. She put some gray on my head. In as much as when I said I would like to bring Dr. Rashidi here, Lisa was like, we're going to do it. And I was like, I don't know. She's like, no, it's going to get done. And she connected me with individuals who had like minds. And then even when that was done, we had some rough bumps and things and questions, and I got scared. Miss Mosley was like, hang tough, we're gonna do this. I got it, I don't fail. You know who I am, you know what I do. And I was like, okay. But every turn of the road, when something went awry, or I needed some support or information, any of those names I could call Lisa first. So I introduce her to you and tell you, this event is as much hers as anybody here, because when I was just talking stuff, she made me do my stuff. So I appreciate her, and she'll be doing the introduction of the keynote. Thanks again, and tell somebody what they missed, because this we're going to try to do at least regularly, as I said, to connect us to the larger Black diaspora, which is information. So thanks again for coming, and I'll introduce Ms. Lisa Mosley.
Good evening, good evening. I am Lisa Mosley. It's nice to meet y'all. How y'all doing? Oh, come on now. This is a party. You know, it's not often that we get a lot of black folks in the room together on a positive note. So when we do, let's make it a party. Let's celebrate our history. Let's celebrate our beauty. Because if y'all can see what I see from here, you look absolutely amazing. So thank you. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for showing up. This is, in fact, a vision come true, and it is such an honor to be amongst all of you. It is an honor to have Dr. Rashidi here. It is an honor to have worked with all of the people that made this come together. I'm not going to be before you long. I'm going to read you a piece of his bio very briefly, and we're going to get this party started, y'all. Y'all ready? All right. Runoko Rashidi is a historian, anthropologist, research specialist, writer, world traveler, public lecturer focusing on the African foundations of humanity and classical civilizations. To date, he has visited 102 countries and lectured in 57, including notable successes in India, Australia, Namibia, Nigeria, South Africa, Senegal, Zimbabwe, Uganda, France, England, the Netherlands, Jamaica. I got Jamaican roots, y'all. Canada, Venezuela, and Brazil. He is the author or editor of over 18 books. Dr. Rashidi has made his motto the statement that history is a light that illuminates the past and a key that unlocks the door to the future, and believes that his major mission in life is to help make Africans proud of themselves, to help change the way Africa is viewed in the world, and to help reunite a family of people that has been separated far too long. It is my honor, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Runoko Rashidi.
Good evening, everyone. How's everybody? I'm delighted to be back in Las Vegas. Las Vegas is more, obviously, than glitz and glamour and lights. It has a conscious African community, and so I feel right at home. I'm also so impressed by the organization tonight. I'm used to really, really terrible organization, things that don't start on time and people that make you wonder. I did a presentation in Toronto in February, believe it or not, in a shopping mall, where people walking back and forth, babies crying and stuff, people mad. So, I mean, this is an oasis in the desert. You probably hear that a lot. I'm 58 years old. Is there anybody older than 58 here in the room tonight? All right, you don't have to turn on the lights. We don't want to embarrass anybody. You can turn them back down now. I have your permission to begin. Yes. All right. I want to just thank everybody. Sister Lisa, I don't know if I've ever had anybody more beautiful introduce me. Brother Franklin, Franklin has an incredible personality. And so I don't know if I've ever met anybody quite like Brother Franklin, but it's great. Now, tonight's presentation is the first presentation since I broke my foot about 3 weeks ago. You see me in a very informal attire with my sandals on. There's a reason for that. And I've just gotten back from the United States a 3 days ago, and I leave again next week, and I will return to the western part of North America for about 5 months. So this is the only presentation I'm doing in the whole month of April, and I hope it's a special one. Now, several months ago, I do a lot of different presentations. I've done stuff on the African presence in the Americas. Asia is supposed to be my forte.
I have a new book on the African presence in early Europe, Great Black Women, Kemet, a lot of things. But sometimes I get asked to do presentations where I'm required to think a little bit and kind of push the envelope a little bit. And several months ago, a brother who had I recently got out of prison in Baltimore asked me to do a presentation with the title, we thought about it for a while, and that is the transformative nature or the transformative power of African history and culture. And I was very reluctant to do that, just laziness and complacency. But I thought about it and I tweaked it a little bit and I did it. And it turned out to be pretty good. And I've been working on it ever since, and it's more or less become my signature presentation where you get a little bit of everything from Runoko Rashidi. And tonight I'm going to do that presentation for you. It'll be expanded. It's evolved some. It's entirely a visual presentation. So I'm going to ask everybody to not film it. Some of the people that I'm going to show you would not like to be filmed, including some of the, for example, Aboriginal Australians and Pacific Islanders who, for spiritual reasons, wouldn't want it to be filmed, although they've given me permission to show the pictures. So I hope we have that understanding. I know it's tempting to photograph, but I'm sure you'll respect that observation. Now, this is a brother. I would tell you, I would ask you to guess who he is, but his name is right there, so you don't have to do that. Stanley Tookie Williams III. And we went to high school together. I went to Washington High School in what is now South Central LA. We didn't call it South Central at the time. That name came later. And when I was in the 11th grade, maybe the 12th grade, these two, what I call weird-looking guys, I would use the word queer, but queer has taken on a different connotation now, like gay, and since I was a child. And so you have to guard your words very carefully. But these two funny-looking brothers, who are a lot bigger than me, will come up to the bus stop where I was at, and we would all catch the bus together, and they would have these derbies on, and they would have canes, and they would have earrings in there. I'd never seen a man with an earring before. And I look at these guys, and sometimes they'd come up and try to be intimidating, and they'd say, give me a quarter. And sometimes I would, and sometimes I wouldn't. And I think a little guy, nerdy-looking little guy, who would say no to them really impressed them. 20 years went by. And by that time, I had become something of a historian, and Raymond Washington and Tookie Williams had become infamous. And they founded the social organization, also called a street gang called the Crips, which is a name which is now known all over the world. And I was approached by, and we could turn off, if we could dim some of these lights, it would be great. I was approached by a woman who told me that her significant other was in prison on death row in San Quentin, and he and two other brothers who were members of the Crips had written a book. And since they had heard of Runoko Rashidi, by that time my name was associated with the great Ivan Van Sertima, and I was circulated a lot in the prisons. They got in contact with me and asked me, could I help them get this book published? And I said, well, let me see it. And the book was a mess. But I mean, what do you expect on death row? It's not like they had the internet and word processors and stuff at people's disposal. It was handwritten, a little bit of it was typed, but the subject matter was about black children and African history. And African historians like Sheikh Anta Diop and Jacob Carruthers, and I read it and I was mesmerized. So I told them, yeah, it's possible that this book could be published, but it's a mess. You have to clean it up. Well, do you know anybody who can do that? Well, do you have any money? I asked. No, we don't, they responded. And I said, I'll do it. Because I knew, based on my own background, that I could easily be, but for the grace of God, me being in that situation. And through this experience, which I still have the manuscript, Tookie and I developed a whole new relationship. And I reminded him of him trying to jack me up, and he was very embarrassed, and he apologized. And sometimes he would break down. He would call me at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning from death row. I guess that was a privilege that they had. And cry like a baby. This big, monstrous, 300-pound brother. And he would say, but Runoko, if only I knew then what I came to know. And that was perhaps the best example personally of how knowledge of self can transform you. So I want to use Tookie as an example to begin with, and then we'll go to another one. Now, of course, this is Sister Hadia Pimpleton, and at first I thought it was her mother, and it is her mother, but somebody else told me that the older woman was actually a sister who had lost 5 of her children to gun violence in the wonderful city of Chicago. Now, I have 1 child, and I could only imagine how it would feel to lose that child, but to lose 5 of them, all of them. And then, of course, Sister Hadia, who just happened to be, I guess, in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, according to the statistics I got, last year in Chicago, there were more than 500 homicides. And most of them were in the black communities of Chicago. And most of them were black children shooting other black children. What goes into the mind of a black child who so callously fires a gun at somebody who looks like him or her? What do you see? What is in front of you? It's my argument that if we had a stronger sense of self, if we knew that royalty, actually divinity, runs through our veins, it would give us pause. Perhaps we discard the B word that we use so, casually, and the N word that we toss around and justify it. It's my argument. How can you get angry if a white person calls you a nigger when you call yourself one? What is the mentality? And then, of course, the other example, I could use many of them. Be nice to have a before and after of Nicki Minaj or Tiger Woods. I could really go off on Nicki. But here's a good one now. Who is this man right here? No. Who is this? Well, who is this? Are you sure?
That's Red.
Detroit Red. Malcolm Little. Now, although his parents were Garveyites, Malcolm says in his autobiography, and this is what's portrayed in the movies about Malcolm, a pimp, drug dealer, a burglar, a common criminal, a thief, who was transformed by knowledge of self. When he was in the penitentiary, not only did he come under the influence of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but he read Carter G. Woodson, and he read J. Rogers, read everything available, and he became our black shining prince. Perhaps these are the 3 best examples I can give about the transformative power of African history and culture. I want to begin with that. Now, let's talk about, I'm going to go through different phases here. In fact, let me have a seat, rest my foot. That's my excuse for sitting down. And talk about some of the historians. Of course, you recognize the short, handsome brother from some years back. But next to me is the great, my major teacher, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. This picture was taken 30-some years ago when I worked at Compton College. So I wanted to start with Ivan and that terribly ugly tie. And then these 4. I call this picture the quartet. And you probably recognize some of them, if not all of them. 3 of them are ancestors, and 1 of them we might call a living ancestor. Of course, closest to me is the great John Henry Clark. Who I knew well, and who taught me so much. He would say being black and beautiful is meaningless unless you're also black and powerful. He would say that the powerful would not teach the powerless to take power from them. He would say Pan-Africanism or perish. And next to him is a man who changed my life. At least a book that he wrote changed my life. This is the great Chancellor James Williams, who, among other things, wrote a book called The Destruction of Black Civilization. And that book really did it for me. I read it as an 18-year-old freshman at the University in Southern California, and I never looked back. I knew that I wanted to be a historian from that point. Because he said not only did black people have a great history before slavery, which was a total revelation to me, an epiphany for before me, because I knew that my history began with slavery. I was all I'd ever been taught. And so to find out that we had something going on before shackles and chains were placed on our hands and our feet, that was revolutionary for me. And then he said, this is how we can get it back. And even before that, this is how we lost it. That's maybe the question that I get before any other question, and that is, Brother Runoko, Dr. Rashidi, Baba, if we had it going on, if we built the pyramids, the tombs and the temples, the great libraries, all of those things, what happened? To the point that most of us don't even think we ever had. And then he said that black people traveled all over the world in ancient times, before slavery. And I was hooked, because from that point on, I knew that I wanted to find out what happened to those sisters and brothers who left Africa way back in the day. And then standing up is the living member of the quartet, and that is Dr. Dr. Joseph Alfredo Antonio Binyakinen, who we affectionately call Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben's greatest contribution, I think, is actually taking people to Kemet so they could see it for themselves. Before Asha Kwesi, before me, before Charles Finch, before anybody, Dr. Ben was taking people to see the pyramids. Those things that when you stand there, you actually pinch yourself and say, could human beings have done that? Especially black people. You figure they must have come on time, for one thing. Dr. Ben, who's living in a nursing home in the Bronx. And then the light-skinned brother, because you know we range in complexion from snow to crow and bright to night, for various reasons, is the great Jackson, who was born in Aiken, South Carolina on April 1st, 1907. He would say, I was born on April 1st, I was born on April Fool's Day, and I've been a fool ever since, fooling with these black people. And he wrote controversial books. He wrote a book called Was Jesus Christ a Negro? Christianity Before Christ. I would imagine you could run out of even Las Vegas for that. Imagine that, Christianity Before Christ. Introduction to African Civilizations, which is the book that turned me out. So these are 4 big ones. And then the great Dr. Asa Grant Hilliard III, Nana Bafora, who, for me, was more than a great historian and a great scholar, just a wonderful brother and a good friend. Towards the end of his life, Asa and I had gotten really close. When I became a father for the first and only time at the tender age of 50, Asa was more excited than I was. He posted my baby's pictures on the internet, and so I had to say, Asa, don't do that, man. Just a prince, a nice guy. You couldn't help but love Asa if you knew him. And so when he passed, it was more like a friend had died than a scholar. Sometimes scholars, and I guess that could be a good example, are lacking in personal attributes. Okay? I'm a great scholar, but I might lag in a lot of other things. Asa was just a nice guy, and I miss him. And then this is Sheikh Anta Diop from Senegal. And more than anybody, I think, showed, as if he needed to be showed, that ancient Egypt was black, that it was African. Egypt is in Africa, by the way. I don't know if you knew that or not. I've been to Egypt 22 times, and it's been in Africa every time. I was there last year, it was in Africa. You would think if Egypt had moved to another continent, it would have been on CNN or something like that. The great Sheikh Anta Diop. We call him Diop, but it's Diop. And then let's not leave the sisters out. Let's not do that. And this is one of the greatest historians. This is Mr. Scylla Dungy Houston, who is a school teacher and a journalist. And I'm going to go much faster, because believe me, I only brought about 15,000 photographs. So you know I can't show them all. So I'm going to go real quick now, because I'm in the mood. Scylla Dungy Houston in 1926 produced a wonderful book called The Wonderful Ethiopians of the Ancient Kushite Empire. And then here's a brother you may not know, Antenor Furman, a great African scholar from Haiti. In the 1880s, he had a book called The Equality of the Human Races about Kemet. Joel Augustus Rogers from Jamaica, from Negril, who knew Marcus Garvey as a boy. When I was told by John G. Jackson that J. Rogers had visited 60 countries, I made up my mind about 1990, well, if he could do 60, considering the difficulties that he lived in during that time, I know I can go to 65, and that seems astronomical to me. So I'm at 102 and counting, and every time I go to a new country, I think Jay Rogers and say, Runoko, well done, where you going next? And don't worry about it, because we got your back. We're going to make a way. And here's another one that somebody just sent me. This is a nice one of me when I had black hair, and the great John Henry Clark in the 80s. And this is another great brother that I had a chance to work with. These are people that have either influenced me or I work with directly. And this is Dr. Edward Scobie. Dr. Scobie was from Dominica, and he did magnificent work on the African presence in early Europe. He talked, for example, about William Shakespeare's significant other, a black woman named Lucy Negro. A brother from Brazil, Abdias do Nascimento, the great African scholar from South America. He was like a prince. He died about 2 years ago. He was 95. And myself and Ivan and Jan Carew, who's Ivan Van Sertima's mentor, he told me a lot of funny stories about Ivan. He's the one who introduced Ivan to the concept of they came before Columbus. Because Ivan would tell you, and then another good one of being Dr. Ben about 2-3 years ago. And here at the bottom, a sister asked me at the beginning, Runoko, did I know the Robinson brothers? This is Dr. Edward Robinson in Philadelphia. He passed about a year or so ago with Dr. Ben. I was able to broker this meeting between these two great scholars. And next to me is a young brother named Jabari Osase. You're going to hear about him. And finally, another young sister, an up-and-coming scholar named Anika Osase. And this is a photograph I took of her at the catacombs in Alexandria. Some geography. Look at how big Africa is. You thought Africa was a little place, didn't you? Africa is 12 million square miles. You could not only put the United States in there 3 or 4 times, but you could put the US in there, China, India, Eastern Europe, all of Western Europe, Japan, and still have some room. And then how Africa has been divided. Look at what the French got, all that red area. And then the British certainly weren't cheated. Cecil Rhodes, who the Rhodes Scholar is named after, dreamed of a British empire that would stretch from Cape Town to Cairo. A lot of people don't recognize the Spanish as colonizers. They were. The Portuguese got a nice little piece. They got oil-rich Angola and Mozambique. They got Capo Verde and Guinea-Bissau. The Germans were colonizers. They had what is now Namibia, which used to be Southwest Africa. And they almost exterminated whole groups of African people there. Cameroon, they were practicing slavery, the Germans were, selling black people in Cameroon in the 20th century. And German East Africa, most of which was Tanganyika. The Italians had Libya, Muammar Gaddafi country, and Eritrea, and Somalia. And I left a big piece out, Belgium, because Belgium wasn't really the colonizer so much as King Leopold was. At one time, all of Central Africa belonged to the King of Belgium, Leopold II, who was a butcher, who would have put Adolf Hitler to shame. But we don't hear about that Holocaust, do we? Are black lives any less than other people's lives? The world seems to think so, though. I had a sister today, infuriated me, tell me she doesn't believe in race, they were all the same, and that black people were racist. I'm still thinking about that. You may think you're the same, but are you treated the same? Tell that to the next white cop who pulls you over. Tell him you don't believe in race, that everybody is the same, you don't see color. And then send me a Facebook message from the police station. And then we like to say that Africa is not poor, Africa is being looted. Africa is the wealthiest piece of land in the world. Oil, gas, diamonds, uranium, copper, manganese, iron ore, and gold. And something else called coltan. That's in all of your cell phones. Comes out of Central Africa. When I do presentations, I usually ask people, I'm not going to do it tonight, what do you think of when you think of Africa? People tell me wild animals, poverty, disease, corrupt governments. I get all of that. And I begin to break that down. I say, do you know Africa is where the first people came from? Africa is is where people first had a big brain and stood on 2 feet. Where they first had a house. Where they first wore shoes. Where they first wore clothes. Where they first domesticated fire. Where they first domesticated animals. Where they first sailed a boat. Where they first built a city. Where they first had mathematics. Where they first buried the dead. Where they first played music. Where they first had art. Where they first had religion and philosophy and spirituality. People say, I didn't know that, Brother Runoko. So I'm trying to transform how we think about Africa, and in the process, transform how we think about ourselves. Here's an African scientist. This is an old photograph. And he has with him the bones that he discovered of an ancient African woman named Dinknesh, who the world knows as Lucy, 3.4 million years old. Africa is the mother continent. And then here's one called the Ishango bone. The Ishango bone is perhaps, I think, the second oldest known use of mathematics in the world. The first known use of mathematics is from Swaziland in southern Africa. It's called the Lebombo bone. I don't have a good picture of it. This one's 25,000 years old. It's in the Natural History Museum in Brussels. And then, of course, let's go to Kemet in northeast Africa. And here is a classic example of African architectural achievement. This is the world's first large stone building. And it's also the first of about 120 surviving pyramids. And this one, of course, is the step pyramid at Saqqara, designed by our brother right here, Imhotep. Not the Imhotep in the mummy movies. Not him. The real Imhotep, who is the Prince of Peace, who was the world's first scientist, who gave us the expression, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die. Don't that sound like something a brother would say? Who was the father of medicine thousands of years before Hippocrates, the original hypocrite? Here he's a writer. 2,000 years after his death, he was deified as kind of a god of writing. And before other ancient African writers would write something, they would invoke the name of Imhotep. And they would spill ink in the ground and ask themselves rhetorically, could there ever be another Imhotep? That's pretty lofty praise. A black man. Sometimes I ask children, give me the name of one black person who lived before slavery. They can't think of any. But they can think of Julius Caesar. And you can think of Aristotle and Socrates and Alexander the Greek. But when it comes to our own history, usually we're not able to evoke the name of one ancestor. And of course you have these magnificent monuments developed by Africans called miracles in stone. Here's the one of Khafre. Khafre is the second of the great pyramid builders during that era, and in front of him are actually the pyramid of Khafre and the monument that we call Hormakato, or the Great Sphinx, 200 feet long, 70 feet high, has the body of the lion and the head of the king. It is said to represent man conquering his lower nature. But you have here the Luxor, so I guess you don't have to go to Egypt. You see a white Sphinx with blue eyes and a white man in front of it. But I'm sure if you look closely, they have some black slaves around there somewhere. This is the image that most of us had. I had it for 10, 12 times after I'd been to Egypt. I still could not close my eyes and imagine black people building the pyramids. This education is deep. And then here's one for you. This is a photograph I got in the Brooklyn Museum of Fine Arts. And what it shows is an image of Hormakato, the face of the Sphinx. This is in 1755. Now, most of you have probably heard the tale that Napoleon did it. But this is almost 50 years before Napoleon. So we need to really critically examine history and not accept what anybody says at face value, no matter how highly we esteem that person. All right, let's go. Let's look at some comparisons. You recognize Mount Rushmore in the Dakotas. You have the slave owners, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. But I guess he's balanced out by the man who freed us, according to the movie. According to the movie. And then there's Teddy Roosevelt, who said something very profound. Speak softly and carry a big stick. But this is what we had 3,000 years ago. This is Abu symbol, and there's 4 figures there too. And then this is what you have in Washington, D.C., although it's damaged right now. But this is what we had thousands of years ago in Africa. And here's the reflection pool and the obelisk in Washington, D.C. But this is what we had thousands of years ago. And I know you've seen this. I don't know if the artist was inspired by this image of Tutankhamun and the Tekken at Luxor Temple, but it certainly looks like it. And then for good measure, you got the Oscar in the middle, Asar and Ta on the left and the right. Can all these things be a mere coincidence, or is it a fact that the founding fathers, the slave owners, were profoundly influenced by ancient Egypt? I don't know if they would have said that those were black people they were influenced by, but certainly they were. And then you have this one. This is called Christ in Glory. Now you have a density of churches here, a lot. I wonder how many of them have an image of a Christ that looks like most of the congregation. 0. I lived in San Antonio for 12 years, and there was a famous Negro preacher, and I don't use the word Negro too often, who said, "I'll be dead before I allow an image of a black Christ in my church." What's wrong with that? I know people will say, even here tonight, the color of Christ doesn't matter. If it don't matter, why is he white all the time? It has profound significance. Jesus white, the angels white, everybody white but the devil. So what does that say about you? What does that say about your psychology? I was told as a child, because I grew up in the church, believe me, nobody went to church more than I did. Pentecostals singing and dancing, shouting and speaking in tongues church. That God had created me in his own image. So, I mean, the logic of it, but we don't seem to be prepared for the most part to embrace it, to internalize that. I don't think a people can ever be free and self-determining until they are prepared to worship God in an image that looks like them. And here's a quick little story about this one. I'm in the Coptic Museum in Cairo. Copts are an early branch of Christians. And I saw this picture, I had a camera, I had to have it. Had to have it. Although there was a big sign that said no photography allowed. I waited patiently, and patient is something I'm not. Nobody has ever said, "Runoko, you're so patient." I think they must be talking about somebody else. They have me mixed up with somebody else on Facebook. I didn't see anybody after a while. I pulled my camera out like a thief in the dark. My head was swiveling like Linda Blair in the Exorcist movies. I got ready to focus and click. All at once, a museum official came out of nowhere and shouted at me. The great Runoko Rashidi shouted at and said, "No photography allowed. Can't you see the sign?" Now, for once, Rodney, I didn't lose my temper. I reached in my pocket and gave the guy $1. He said, "Okay." I was amazed. I gave him another. I said, "Sir, why don't you use a flash?" Now, if I had been smart, if I had been like Franklin or Ramon, I would have given him a 20. He said, "Sir, I'm going to walk you out of here with this. We're going to the airport." I know somebody at the airport that look good in your living room. But it's not that old. Here's Asar, painted black and beautiful. Asar is one of the earlier depictions of a resurrected Savior who was involved in an immaculate conception, who came back from the dead twice. And then Ahmed, you sometimes say it right. You usually say amen. But we call him Amen, Amun, Aman, the invisible one, the unseen one, the hidden one. This is 3,500 years old. All right. Let's look at some of the great personalities of Kemet. This is Ahamena, the first pharaoh. From his name we get the expression Aha. And my favorite, a brother from the 12th dynasty, Namare Amenemhet III, and Nepheped-Ra Mentuhotep II, and Amos Nefertari and Amos I. These are the great heroes and sheroes of Kemet. Queen Tai, who is the mother of Akhenaten, who you probably heard of, the wife of Amenhotep III, Amenhotep the Magnificent, either the mother or grandmother of Tutankhamun, who looked like she didn't take no stuff off anybody. And there's her oldest son, Akhenaten, who was married to Nefertiti, who is credited by many as being the world's first monotheist. I don't believe that. I think Africans always understood the oneness of God. But they understood, too, that God had different manifestations. Some people say he wrote the book of Psalms. And he's the first man that we can identify in the world as a man of nonviolence. And Ramses the Great, who reigned for 60 years, the greatest builder in history, who had between 150 and 300 children. All right, let me go on. Here he is again. Taharqa of the 25th dynasty. Each one represents a different dynasty. A dynasty is a family of rulers, one coming after the other. The 25th dynasty, according to John Henry Clark, was our last great walk in the sun. Cushites, from the kingdom of Cush. Now, I know some of y'all are going to snicker because you think Cush represents something very different than what I'm talking about. At least that's what they would do in Southern California. I just put this in here to show that Kemet was not the only great nation in the Nile Valley. There were several. Meroe, Nubia, Cush, Tasseti, the land of Yam. And this is what the people look like. People that I've seen or photographed or something in Sudan. Now this is what I call fair skin, you see. Doesn't fair mean good? So are you telling me that's not fair? I'm in Juba, University of Juba in South Sudan, before the country became independent, hanging out with these brothers, giving a speech. And I kept looking at them, and they said, Dr. Rashidi, is anything wrong? Why do you keep looking at us like that? I said, because I'm envious. What do you mean? I wish I was that black. They said, well, stick around for about 1,000 years. Black is true. These are just various sisters and brothers in the region. Not all of our history is in the Nile Valley. This, for example, is Mansa Kantan Musa I, who economists say, based on the rate of inflation, was the wealthiest man that ever lived. He was Sultan of the Mali Empire. His uncle or cousin or father was Abubakar II, who sailed across the Atlantic. This brother went to Mecca. He was a pious Muslim. He gave away so much gold that the value of gold was diminished for long. He actually had to buy the gold back at an inflated price. And this is one of the mosques that he founded. And these are the Timbuktu manuscripts. And here I am sitting in front of the Niger manuscripts, which I'm told are even more precious than the Timbuktu manuscripts. Nigeria. Nigerians like to say, if you haven't been to Nigeria, you haven't been to Africa. We don't care about Egypt, come to Nigeria. So I went to Nigeria 3 times. Now I can say to their satisfaction, I've been to Africa and loved it. And I love Nigeria. I could be an ambassador for Nigeria. The lions didn't eat me. I was not the victim of the internet scam. Nobody asked me to traffic heroin. This is, you said that Africa was poor, right? No, Africans are poor. Because the wealth is being taken out of Africa. This is one of the Asantehines of Ghana, king of the Asante. But he has so much gold that he actually needs somebody to help him lift his arm up and down. These are images that our people need to see, especially young people. From South Central Africa, the ruins of ancient Zimbabwe, and then the plunder. Our history did not begin with invasion, colonization, and enslavement, and it's not going to end there. But that's a part of our history, too. These are the British in a punitive expedition, a raid in Benin in 1897. And these are I found some of the artifacts in London in the British Museum. This is what they stole, and this is what they still have. We're looking at a new phase in history now, the enslavement period now. This is in Tunisia, a place called Kebali. I went there. It was one of the eeriest places I've ever been. Not all the dungeons were on the west and east coast. Some of them were in the interior. And Africans were marched here from as far away as Senegal, Mali, and Chad. And then this is, I believe, Cape Coast. I always get Cape Coast and Elmina mixed up in Ghana. And then something I never thought I would see, but you know that in these places the women were separated from the men. But in Goriad in the Senegal, you had an infant's dungeon. Now I want to just reflect on that for a moment. I'm in the men's dungeon, I've been marched in the interior. I don't know what's happened to my family. I'm beaten and bruised and battered, and I'm laying in a hole in the ground called a dungeon. And my chains are still on me. I'm filthy, I stink. It's hot. There's no air conditioning. There's no toilets. There's no light. People lying to the left of me, dying to the right of me, dead in front of me, and I don't know what's going to happen. And I've been branded like an animal with a hot iron. And in the women's dungeon is my wife, or my mother, or my sister, or my daughter, or my grandmother, or my niece, or my granddaughter. I mean, you can imagine what happened there. And then in the distance, from the infant's dungeon, I hear a voice calling, "Daddy, help me. I'm scared, Daddy. Come get me." And you can't intervene. Now imagine the trauma, the psychological damage. And this went on for hundreds of years. It's no wonder we act crazy. We haven't had a walkthrough. Every day, all week, they've been covering Boston. I don't blame them for that. It's on the news 24/7. Those people are going to have psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists come talk to them. We never had that. Nobody ever walked us through that. Nobody ever said, it's going to be all right. And so the trauma is still there. It's right there in our psyches. I wonder if that's why we have so much difficulty with relationships in the black community today. And I'm a firm advocate of black men need to be with black women. I'm big on that. But could it be that we lost so much respect for ourselves that some of us find it hard to look a black woman in the eye? And some of our sisters perhaps don't have the respect for us that we would like, because maybe, deep down inside, she might say, in a pinch, can my man protect me? All of these things are still rooted in this ma'afa that we call the transatlantic slave trade, the greatest crime humanity has ever witnessed. We have not healed from that. We have a lot of healing to do. We are hurt people. Here we go. But there was always resistance, and one of the greatest resistance leaders was an African woman named Nzinga from Angola. And here's an image of one of her contemporaries, a brother named Alfonso I of Congo. The beauty of Africa. Mosi Otunya, also known as, they call it the smoke that thunders. Some people call it Victoria Falls, 41 miles long. The water drops 1,500 feet. I love it, at the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. Or the Nile, or the Niger, or the Congo, or the northern route. This is in Morocco. I used to take groups there, and we would come there late in the afternoon, and those of us who were brave enough, or crazy enough, or daring enough would sleep outdoors. And the stars would come out at night. It looked like you could just pluck them out of the sky and give it to your queen. Hey baby, this is for you. And then in the morning, before sunset, we'd get a string of camels and ride to the top of the dunes and look out and see Algeria when the sun came up. Sometimes I would give a lecture. Africa is a beautiful place. As Malcolm said, if Africa wasn't beautiful, the white man wouldn't want it. Now, we're going to quickly go around the world. You've had a little bit of your introduction. Here we go. We're going to start here. We're going to go to Asia. We're going to look at the Australia, the Pacific, Europe, and then we're going to call it a night. My most recent book, African Star of Asia, the Black Presence in the East. It came out in November. This is from ancient Iraq, people that were called the Blackheads of Sumer. This is from Judea, 2,700 years old. This is the tomb, and a lot of these are original pictures. This is the tomb of Bilal, one of the greatest of the African Muslims, who was the first muezzin, the first one to climb into the minaret in the morning and call the faithful to prayer. So important, he's referred to as a third of the faith of Islam. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is supposed to have said once, Bilal, last night I dreamed that I went to paradise, and I found that you had been there before me. And this is his tomb in Damascus. I hope it's still there. This is Antar, born of an African mother and an Arab father. Many of the Arabs themselves were black people. Antar, before it took the Lionheart and King Arthur, was the father of chivalry, a champion of the weak and the oppressed, a lover of women. He wrote love poems and led his troops into battle victoriously. A black man in early Persia, a brother, an Ethiopian in the Persian army fighting the Greeks 2,500 years ago. And now we can play the game as we go too, and the game is called Who That Is. Now, it should be obvious. How you play Who That Is, the rules are simple. I show you a picture and you say who that is. Now this is the former Crown Prince of Kuwait who looks like Richard Pryor. From Palestine, southern Iraq, from Oman, Israel, Palestine. Who that is, obviously, Runoko Rashidi with these three sisters in Turkey. On my first trip to Turkey. We kind of really, fell in together. And they told me I was the first black person that they had ever met who wasn't from Sudan, their ancestral homeland, or Turkey itself. We spent a whole day together. I asked them all kinds of stuff about them, me being the anthropologist, their lives, their histories. They told me all their husbands were dead, had been worked to death. They were the victims of racial discrimination. And one of them, a young one, apparently the one taking this picture, actually came up and started stroking my arm and looked me in the eye and said, you look just like my dead husband. And I said, well, sister, I think this interview has pretty much come to an end. Oman, Yemen, Persian Gulf, Saudi Arabia, southern Iraq, I say West Las Vegas, southern Iraq. Two colleagues of mine, and one, this sister here is in Abu Dhabi, and the other is a student of mine at the University of Istanbul. Myself and a brother from Jordan. Actually, he was a black Palestinian living in Jordan, and he told me his name was Roger Juma. And we talked the better part of the day on my first trip to Jordan. He told me I've never been victim of racial discrimination except once. He said he was only called the N-word one time in his life. I said, what was it? He said, at a gas station in Miami, Florida. This little boy, a brother, who didn't think he was a brother, a lot of us are like that. Until you get in a bad situation, then you become super black. You become a brother once white folks do you bad. He tried to probably con me into taking me up on this little donkey about this big to the top of a mountain with a tomb called a monastery. I was told it was 1,000 steps. I said, 1,000 steps, that ain't nothing. I can do that in my sleep. After about 20 steps, I said, wow. After 50 steps, I was breathing hard. After 70 steps, I sat down for a while. And after 100 steps, I was looking for a cockroach, anything that would take me to the top. And this little boy, he said, sir, I will take you to the top for 10 Jordanian dinar. I would have given him a small fortune. But I got on the little donkey, and the donkey started to waver like that. It started leaning towards a cliff. I said, here's 20 dinar, get me off. Children at a Palestinian refugee camp in Ramallah, a sister in Oman, a Palestinian woman. These are called the invisible people, because you don't see them on TV for the most part. This is Miss Israel, and your brother, Barack Obama. I started to say that was Harry Reid in the middle. Now let's move into South Asia, one of my favorite turfs. And this is what scientists and anthropologists say the first people of Asia look like. This little sister in the Andaman Islands in the Bay of Bengal in the Indian Ocean. And of course, my sister right here for sure, 4,000 years ago in Pakistan. Just look at the hand on her head. From Afghanistan, a black king in medieval India, and these are the people there today. My pals. These are my first images, these black and whites I got when I was a student at UCLA. I would go to school on Saturday in the library and thumb through these old books. And one day, a photograph fell out. I said, oh, isn't that interesting? And I helped a few more fall out, and that became the basis of mine. But look at these black people. And I'm glad I did, I call it reparations, because when the book was reprinted, these pictures weren't in there. Now you know you see this brother anywhere. All from India, and these are more recent. These are the untouchables. Now, some of these are originals, and some of these were sent to me by untouchables from India who want me to tell their story. And you see they have naturally straight to wavy hair. This is the hair you'd be buying this stuff. Look how little some of these people are. I felt good being around people like that. It's not often I get a chance to do that. And I was told before I went there that I was in grave danger. I need to be really careful. So I got a red, black, and green necklace with an ankh on it, a pendant of Asar Osiris, and I had a Buddha that had been dipped in the Ganges River in my pocket. I thought it would ward off danger. A friend of mine said, Runoko, damn man, what you need is a knife. Naturally, I'm not that sort of person. Now, we don't even have to play with that because they all look like people we know. Yeah. Now, look at these children. Wow. I don't know what they're looking at right here. She's looking at me and she's saying, what a handsome, distinguished person. She looks like my mother, except for the earrings. This was the blackest person I'd ever seen at that time. This brother stood out among a group of black people. I couldn't take my eyes off this brother. And he was staring at me too. Now, I don't know what he was thinking. But I was thinking, I said, damn, that brother's black! So he invited my two group into his house and there was a picture of a white Jesus. I said, brother, have a nice day. These are the Banda people. Look, these are all in India. It's my argument that India has the largest black population in the world, in any one country. Nepal, Pakistan, another one from India, Southeast Asia. This takes us to the magnificent temple complex of Angkor Wat. But this is what you see when you go there. These are from ancient Cambodia. This is the cover of one of my first book in French. Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines, Cambodia, Malaysia. Look at that afro. Would you believe I used to have one like that? As a university student. And I don't know what this kid has in his mouth. It's not a cigarette. And it's not a joint. I don't know what it is. Philippines. These are the first people of Southeast Asia. Look, Philippines, Vietnam. This takes us to ancient China. This is a bronze vessel from the Shang dynasty of holding a black person. I think these are the people the Chinese call black dwarfs, who they recognize as the first emperors of China. From China. A brother in China, I took this picture in the Victoria and Albert Museum of London, giving the Black Power salute. I'd like to think so. 13 years ago. A brother in China who was a close friend or bodyguard, perhaps, of Kublai Khan. A brother in China collecting taxes. And I want to remind you, this is Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma is the person who took martial arts from India to the Far East and invented Zen Buddhism, I believe. Look, this is how the Chinese depicted him. I didn't do that. Even the goatee. This is Fudomaya, one of the 5 wisdom kings in Japanese mythology. There are 2 Japanese proverbs that have been used to suggest a black presence. One says, for a samurai to be brave, he must have a bit of black blood. Another one says, to make a good samurai, half the blood in one's veins must be black. What does that mean? Black girl in China today. Let's go down under Australia, where our sisters and brothers have been treated like 2-footed beasts. This sister is at a place called Palm Island. Palm Island is 2 hours by fast boat from the mainland of Queensland, which Aboriginal people or indigenous people call KKK country. You know, it wasn't until January 1967 that black people in Australia were considered human beings by the government. Up to that point, the people we know as Aboriginal Australians were regarded as plants and animals, as flora and fauna. And here are some of them. Here's me looking cool in the center of Australia. I thought I looked cool. Now these are 2, I don't mind getting in here from time to time. I'm like Alfred Hitchcock in a movie. I'm going to make a cameo. Sometimes a long one. And sometimes it's okay because this is my last speech in Australia. And these are 2 of the founding members of the Aboriginal Australian Black Panther Party. They actually fronted brand to the Panthers in 1975. These are two of the members, the originals. It was a great honor. Australia, Tasmania. There is a place called Tasmania. And there is a Tasmanian devil. Do I need to elaborate? These sisters and brothers were set upon by the British around 1802, and by 1876, all of the full-bloods had been murdered. Roasted alive, cut in half, decapitated, castrated, scalped, skinned. Some of them survived, but I had to go there and find that out. Some of the women were kept as sex slaves, and children were born from those unions. And these are the Aboriginal Tasmanians of today who have a wicked life. From north of Australia, a place called Bathurst Island, these brothers from a group called the Tiwi. Indonesia. We're in the South Pacific now. This is a fine sister right here who reminds me of Beyonce. This is the Beyonce I like the best, though. With clothes on, you know, it sounds odd for me to say a beautiful black woman, I like her better with clothes on. And this is a photograph of her in Cuba. Go, sister. From New Guinea, who does he look like? You can say Marvin Gaye, or you can say Theodore Pendergrass. Let's go and see if you were paying attention. Marvin, Teddy. From the Solomon Islands, a whole bunch of these blondes, and then black. These are the Buka. I had more fun there. Nobody even knew where I was. It was one of the few times in my life where I went somewhere and nobody knew where I was, because I didn't know where I was going to be. This is deep in the South Pacific. I met these sisters and brothers, and they said, where are you from? They said, are you from Jamaica? No. Are you from South Africa? No. Where are you from then, sir? From the United States. Oh, we never met. You're an African. We never met one. And this is in October 2008 before the election. They said, who are you going to vote for? I said, well, Barack Obama, come let me take my picture. And this sister primped so long, her ice cream started to melt. She had to pick her afro out. These are from a place called Bougainville Island, deep in the South Pacific. Look at this brother. 50 cent t-shirt, not 50 cent, 50 cent, deep in the Pacific. Fiji. This sister is from Fiji. Now, I fell in love with her. Don't take long for me to fall in love. Quickly. Watch out, you all. Sisters, I mean, but you all watch out. Brothers, I'm in Fiji, and I was on a part of the tour. I thought the tour was just for me, foolishly. But it just came to pick me up at my hotel. We went around, and by the time we got to this village, which is called the Sese village, I was the only black person on the bus. These mean-looking white people looking at me like, how dare you be on this trip? And I looked at them with a look akin to that. And so we get to this village of Sese, which is important because this is where the Fijians say they first landed when they came from Africa. So naturally, it was a big attraction for me. She looked at this group up and down, including me. She looked at these white people and says, you know, we used to eat a lot of white people. First she said, we come from Africa. We eat African, we speak in African, and we come from Tanzania. She said, we used to eat a lot of white people. And then she paused for effect and says, but we had to stop because the meat was so bad it made us throw up and vomit. I knew that was a woman for me. I knew that was the woman I've been looking for all my life. But she was mad because those Europeans turned red. I said, sister, I'm hardly hearing. Can you say that just one more time? And look at this blonde child. Now these are natural blondes now. These are my pictures here. This is from East New Britain. This little boy was from Fiji. From the Solomons. These are natural blondes, the first blondes. Look at this kid making a face for the camera. And this little boy just mean all day. There he is again. Look at me again. I want to ask him, do you need a hug or something? But I was afraid he might hit me if I got close. Look at the hair textures here, and the colors. All right, let me go quickly. It's all South Pacific Islanders. Looks like Jill Scott Aretha. This is my partner who is the chief of the Dani people in West Papua New Guinea. Who looks, hey, you got it, man, LeBron. Give him a prize. New Caledonia. Miles Davis. Tell me he don't look like that. Who does he look like? Dizzy Gillespie. Wow. New Zealand, Hawaii, King of Hawaii, King of Hawaii. Let's look at Europe, and then we're going to finish up in the Americas. My newest book on the African presence in Europe. I'm really writing a lot these days. This is what scientists say the first people in Europe look like. You can figure out who the scientist is and who the first person is. What I don't understand, though, is where the eyebrows, where the hair. It had to be cold. Get it. These prehistoric figurines, I think, is how they portrayed God in early Europe in the form of a black woman. I can relate to that. God is a black woman. Hey, can I get an amen? Amen. That's a weak amen, but this is Las Vegas. From ancient Greece, an African emperor in early Rome, Septimius Severus, his son Caracalla, and his grandson Alexander Severus. At the height of imperial Rome, there was an African dynasty called the Severan dynasty. And look at the gnosis. What about that? And an African pope. And this one, I don't know if I'm going to keep it or not. It's called the Ivory Bangle Lady. And it's a reconstruction of a skull of a black woman found in York, England, 1,600 years ago. And she was very wealthy. And in her tomb, they found all these ivory bangles. So she's called the Ivory Bangle Lady. One of the three wise kings who came to pay homage to the Christ child in the manger of Bethlehem. In the European Renaissance, it was common to portray the youngest of them as a black man. And a black Madonna child, my favorite. In Eisenstadt, in Switzerland, I took this one. Said no photography. I didn't even think twice. I just started taking pictures. And they were having mass, and nobody ever said, "Sir, you know you're wrong." I signed it, just had enough. Look how beautiful it is. And look how buff little Jesus is. I would hate for him to hit me. We're working out. They treat these as living, breathing entities. Like they are real people. They change their jewels and give them fresh clothes. They are thought to be miracle workers. They are the superstars of the cult of Mary. This one is in Luxembourg. I'm taking a group there in October to see these. Spain, specifically Montserrat, and then you can see Pope, one of the popes before it. There are two popes and a black Madonna. And this represents, obviously, the Moors moving into Europe from Africa. This is now the British colony of Gibraltar, but this is the fortress of a black man named Tariq. Moors in Europe fighting Europeans, black. Moorish architecture in a place called Cordoba. Moors in Spain playing chess with a white servant 800 years ago. The word Moor means black. It means scorched. They reintroduced civilization to Spain after the fall, to Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire. And I even think that chess is a game that originated in Africa. Why? Because of the prominence of the female. In ancient Africa, women were very powerful. You dare not disrespect the black woman in ancient Africa. I can get with that. You know, on this board, the queen is the most powerful piece. When I play, the king is old and slow. He don't get around too good anymore. When I lose my queen, I just, like a child, knock all the pieces off and say, let's start again. Because what good is a king without a queen? Here's this is from Georgia, in the Caucasus, not Atlanta, Georgia. This is an image of a Moorish woman. This is called Bloodstone. Moors in England. Here's one that somebody sent me from Germany. And I didn't know what it was. I posted it on my Facebook page. Somebody said, Runoko, what did they say? I said, I have no idea. I'll find out. Before I could find out, she did some research. And it says, the clothes make the man. These are Moorish tailors. One has a measuring stick, one with a cloth, and one is the scissors. In Germany, hundreds of years ago. England, at Canterbury, in Canterbury, England. These I find on plates from Florence, Italy in the 16th century. Plates used by the Florentian, I guess that's the word, the nobility of Florence. And they have an image of a Moor. Here's another one. Here's a golden head of a Moor I found in Bavaria, Austria. And the front view. England. Moors. And then we get to our black shining, our knight in shining armor. St. Maurice. patron saint of the Holy Roman Germanic Empire for hundreds of years. A knight in shining armor. And look at this, is the brother sharp or what? The armor is gleaming, but look at that hat, that red hat cocked to the side. There's something special about black people. There he is again in heaven. This guy's looking at St. Maurice, you made the wrong turn. You aren't supposed to be here. But there he is in heaven. A Moorish king. This is the house of the blackheads in Latvia, in Lithuania, in Estonia. These are Ethiopian soldiers at the Battle of Jerusalem. This is where the Moors surrendered to Ferdinand and Isabella in 1492. The flag of Sardinia. The flag of Corsica. These are just Moorish stuff. Here's an image of a Moorish king on the coat of arms of the most recent pope. What does that mean? Does that mean he has Moorish ancestry? Does it mean that his family fought them? What does it mean? I'm saying that the black presence has never been invisible. We have always been there. Now, what would it be like if our children knew these things? How would they be transformed? Or in chains in Prague and the Czech Republic. All right, let me move out of this because I'll be here all day. This is St. Maurice again. I was told this is something I wanted to see all my life. There's a statue of St. Maurice done in 1240 in Magdeburg, Germany. This is a no-go zone for people of color. Asians and Africans are warned not to go there because you'll be beaten. So naturally, that's where I went. My last trip to Germany. This is St. George on the other side. This was a close friend of Mozart, an educator named Angelo Solomon, a Mason. This is Adolf Baden, Swedish court secretary in the 18th century with a jerry curl, no less. The little brother here is Ibrahim Hannibal, who was adopted by Peter the Great. Here he is as an adult, and he's the great ancestor of Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin, the father of Russian literature. These are Pushkin, myself sitting in front of a statue of Pushkin. Pushkin's library. Even now, it's kept just the way it was the day he died. He was born in 1799, he died in 1837, I think. And many Russians wanted to remember what they were doing when they heard that Pushkin died. He's the father of Russian. He had a vocabulary of 20,000 words, the Russian equivalent to Shakespeare, who was very proud of his African heritage. As was, these are members of the family. Here I am in Russia, you know, getting ready to salute Pushkin in front of a vodka shop. This is the father of Alexander Dumas, the brother who wrote The Three Musketeers. Now, what does he look like? Charles Barkley. And Dumas, by the way, is the person who gave us the expression, one for all and all for one. What else did he say? Your work may be finished, but your education is never completed, and a man's mind is elevated to the status of the women with whom he associates. He wrote The Three Musketeers, The Count of Monte Cristo, the men, and he was very proud of his African heritage. A black knight, England, Queen of England. This is an ancestor of Queen Victoria. She supposedly had Moorish blood. She's the wife of King George III. She had 15 children. So if you really want to talk about Victoria's Secret, here you go. Let me finish up. I see Franklin hovering in the background. A black trumpet player of King Henry VIII. The African presence in the art of Europe. And black people in Europe today. There's my daughter, whose mother is black, by the way. And two friends of mine in the middle. You got to say these things so they know how y'all think. Finally, the Americas. This is what scientists say the first person in the Americas looked like. And then we have the great Ivan van Sertima, whose thesis was they came before Columbus. And these are what he was talking about, the Olmec heads. But not all of them are heads. You have these other figurines too, equally Africoid, but the heads are the big ones. Here's a friend of mine, an attorney in DC with a head. A friend of mine's mother in Chicago with a head. Me in a head. But the question is, why do they look like that? We shouldn't have to ask. But people will pose the question, why do they look like black people? Because they're black. Could it be possible? They say, oh no. They look like that because the Native Americans didn't have instruments with which to carve sharp features. Or they're the faces of baby jaguars. You know, they worship the jaguar. I said, no, I didn't know that. And one person told me they look like that because there was a massive earthquake. And these heads, one of which weighs 80,000 pounds, rolled around because of the force of the earthquake and rolled and rolled and rolled in the mud. And when they stopped rolling, they looked like black people. This one apparently rolled so long, he got braids in the back of his head. Look at this one. Who does he remind you of? Shaquille O'Neal. All from ancient America. A black Christ from Panama. A black Christ in Peru. A black Christ in Guatemala. And just for good measure, a black Christ in the Philippines. And black people in places in the Americas today, we normally don't see them. A sister that I met in Bolivia. And a little girl I photographed in Peru. And a sister from Colombia, and me. We must be from the same tribe. And a sister from Mexico. I gave a lecture in her community in a place called Costa Chica, and we got in an argument. I'm good for arguing, apparently. This little 19-year-old sister sitting in the audience, and she said, sir, I liked your presentation. So I said, thank you. I said, you're so beautiful. I do that a lot, not meaning anything. But I think it's important for black men to lift black women up and not have strings attached. We don't lift each other up. Who's going to do it? I said, Sissy Kirby. She says, no, I'm not. I'm ugly. I said, what are you talking about? I'm black. I said, you do, but I'm black. I'm ugly. How could you say a thing? We got into it. Woo! And this little sister, this elder from Ecuador. Now, she was funny. Each one of these has a story. Because I saw this sister at a center I was visiting for women who have been the victims of domestic violence. I was taken there in southern Ecuador. This little sister came walking fast. And she had to be in her 80s at least. And she had these necklaces on. I assume she's a priestess of some sort. And she walked up to me and said, you want to take my picture? Kind of gruff and aggressive. And I said, sure. She said, $1. And she cursed all. I never heard anybody talk like that in any language. And the last thing she said was, screw George Bush, and I assure you she did not say screw. And she walked off. Venezuela, born in Hugo Chavez. Haiti, the great Jean-Jacques Dessalines of Haiti. We owe the Haitians a lot. We owe the Haitians a lot. This is what I call black manhood. And this is I got from a book called Slave Revolts in Puerto Rico. And this is just an image of a brother protecting his wife with an axe against these massive dogs that have been let loose on him. Nat Turner with a Bible and a sword. And here's a new one for you. This sister is called Solitude the Brave. And she was an African freedom fighter in Guadeloupe in the 18th century. And she was captured by the French, and you can see she was pregnant. And they kept her alive until the day the baby was born, then they hung her, trying to find out what happened to the baby. The unknown maroon in Haiti. This is a statue of a brother named Kofi who led a revolt in Guyana, South America. A depiction of Zumbi, the great African patriot in 16th, 17th century Brazil. A woman named Sally Bassett who was burned at the stake by the British in the 16th century in Bermuda because she was accused of giving poison to the other enslaved Africans to kill their masters. Nanny of the Jamaican Maroons, great African freedom fighter in Jamaica, the only female national shero in the Jamaican pantheon. Harriet Tubman, who said, I rescued hundreds of my people from slavery, and I could have rescued hundreds more if only they had known that they were slaves. Do you know, until recently, I thought the Underground Railroad was actually a train. A child told me, sir, you know, it wasn't a train. It never occurred to me that those Africans walked out of slavery. Ooh, wee, Harriet. And this is the sister who financed John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, Virginia. A black businesswoman from California named Mary Ellen Pleasant. She gave John Brown 30 grand. In 1859. I wish somebody would give me $30 tonight. But 30 grand in 1850, that's a lot of money. Martin Robeson Delaney, who gave us the expression Africa for the Africans. And Frederick Douglass, who said power can seize nothing without demand. It never did, it never will. And Elwood Mont Blyden, one of the great African scholars from St. Thomas, and Mary Ann Shadd, the first black woman in North America to publish a newspaper, and Ida B. Wells, a crusader for justice, and George Washington Carver, in the line of Imhotep, an African-American scientist, like Lewis Latimer, and marine biologist Ernest Everett Just, and Carter G. Woodson, who said, if you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. And Paul Robeson, who was the greatest football player in the world but graduated at the top of his university class. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. And Garvey, who said, a people without knowledge of its past is like a tree without roots. And Marcus Mosiah Garvey, when asked, since he was born in Jamaica, Mr. Garvey, you an African or a Jamaican? He said, I would not give up a continent for an island. Some are able to see the big picture. And Malcolm. And Malcolm and Martin. And Malcolm X giving an award to Jay Rogers, like a plaque I got tonight. And Kwame Nkrumah. The point I'm making is that the African decolonization period coincides with the civil rights movement. They didn't exist independently of each other. And we need to make that connection. Kwame Nkrumah at Independence of Ghana, March 6, 1957. And Nkrumah and Martin Luther King in Africa. A lot of people don't know Dr. King went to Africa. He went several times. Dr. King was keenly interested in the African liberation movement. And Rosa Parks. And Fannie Lou Hamer, who was fond of saying, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And this is Queen Mother Moore, reparations activist. And myself with a great educator in New York named Adelaide Sampson. And finally, these children. I want to close with this because I think we need to be very mindful of the statement that we will make and what our children will say about us, in line with the theme of the transformative power of African history and culture. This is a little boy from the Wodaabe community that I photographed in Niger. What will they think of us? And these black girls in Ghana, they make their hair, how do I say it? They keep their hair cut short, the schoolgirls in Ghana, until you're about 14, they don't have issues with hair. Why? Because they come to school to learn. It's not a fashion show. And they're not worried about being safe. They think, I know it sounds crazy, but education is an opportunity. They're not about the Nikes they wore. They're not about the fingernails they had. They're about learning something. When you go and teach in these schools, you are astounded. You never have to say, sit up, be quiet, pay attention, stop talking. You don't pass through a metal detector to get through the schools. It's an honor to be among these children. What will they say about us? These black children in Mexico with very low self-esteem, all they know is slavery. I showed them pictures of Imhotep. I showed them pictures of black light. You can see the light in their eyes. I think with that knowledge, they are less inclined to put a Glock in their hand. They're less inclined to rape a sister. They probably don't use the B word like we casually do. The N word doesn't enter into their vocabulary because they know they come from royalty. They know they come from greatness. The worst thing you can do is teach a child their history began with slavery. You cripple that child. Black people are told all the time, that was a long time ago, get over it, it's not important. You got to concentrate on the now, forget the past. Without the past, what do? No other people do that. You can't tell Jewish people that the Holocaust was a long time ago, get over it. Every day there's a movie about Lincoln, about George Washington, the Vikings, Julius Caesar, Isaac Newton, Shakespeare, Napoleon, Hitler, Stalin. But we are told our history is not important. Get over it. If you get over it, you're lost. African proverb says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And you're not an African because you're born in Africa, sisters and brothers in Las Vegas. You're an African because Africa is born in you. Get comfortable with it.
All right.
Get comfortable with your African self. And these little girls came to a presentation of mine when I was in the Netherlands. I got stuck in the Netherlands. They came. And this little girl that I photographed in Sambo Creek, Honduras. Sambo Creek. And yet white people own all the stores in Sambo Creek. And these children in Haiti with these big eyes, who I met in a Vodou community high on a mountain. And this beautiful black girl and this beautiful black girl in Peru. And this fine, fair-skinned daughter of Africa that attended a presentation I gave in Toronto. Somebody says that the essence of power is the ability to define someone's reality and make them live according to that definition as though they chose that definition. Nicki Minaj is not my role model. That is not my standard of beauty. I've been told I've been hating on Nicki too much. Let me stop. These children that I photographed in the Gambia, in Alex Haley's ancestral village, Kota Kinte and Jufre, what will they think about us? Will they talk about us thousands of years from now? Will they say, this brother found a cure for AIDS? This sister was a great mother. This was the first black governor of Nevada. This person was a wonderful father. This brother had a lot of children and took care of every one of them. This person found a cure for cancer. Or will they say there was a trifling, be about nothing group of people? A brother who was the only thing he was concerned about was how many women he slept with. A sister who was only, hey, that's another discussion. A sister who was mostly concerned about the Indian weave that she wore, the fingernails she had. This person always had the latest pair of Air Jordans. Aren't we better than that? Our ancestors paid a big price. We forget it sometimes. First, imagine what they went through. The horrors, the humiliations, the rape, the degradation. But they survived so that we could be here today. Don't you think we owe them something other than the car that we had, other than the shoes that we had, other than the tie we wore, other than how many times we use the N-word? History is very powerful. Never let anybody forget. It's never the wrong time to drink from that deep well that is called history and culture. And it says it all right here, sisters and brothers, the last picture. Our history did not begin in chains, and it will not end in chains. Now, the physical chains are no more, but the psychological chains are more powerful than ever. This room should have been filled up tonight. Come on. They didn't even charge you to get in the place. But we have so dismissed our history. That black stuff, it is called. Yes, we have a black president. So what? What now? Where do we go from here? What are we going to do for ourselves? How will we save ourselves? That's the essence of the story. Now, I could go on and on till the cows come home, but I think I covered enough for you to get a sense of what I believe is the transformative nature and power of African history and culture. I'm so grateful to the organizers. I'm so grateful to all of these sisters and brothers who brought me here at their own expense. And I hope that this is just the beginning of many, many powerful programs that they bring to you so we can sit down and talk as equals with love and respect and tolerance about what we do to save ourselves. God bless you, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. What we'll do is we'll take a couple of questions and answers, and we have a reception afterwards, so if you want to stay, we're more than telling you to stay.